Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Roger Aylward, an undercover screenwriter living in Connecticut. He's written over a dozen screenplays, the web series Mick Diflo, Stop Being So Positive. He's written commercials, he's written stage plays, and his own short films for the World Wide Web, which is the www dot you see at the start of many website URLs. Thanks for coming on, Roger.
Hey, doing well. Good to see you again.
Yeah. We used to actually pre-pandemic, we used to hang out at Green Granary in New Milford and talk about writing for kind of hours at a time. Green Granary is where they actually filmed the Jerry Seinfeld, David Letterman, comedians in cars getting coffee. So so just a little trivia fact for the Connecticut peeps. Green Granary got a write-up in the local newspaper after they came through. That was pretty cool. And we used to drink a lot of coffee. We would do several refills. So I was taking a bit of a coffee break, and now I'm back. I have returned. Unfortunately, we don't have that incredible restaurant setting anymore. There you are. We don't have we have to get our own refills now. It sucks.
That's it. I hate getting up.
Oh man, I was drinking so much coffee though. I was having like several cups a day, and then strong like espresso type stuff on top of that.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was kind of a lot. All right, so
I've had Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so there's so many options on where to start. You've had a long career, lots of cool trivia. But actually, I was thinking we could start maybe with an icebreaker. Talk about a movie that we both really like, Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, you said one of your like one of the parts that you thought was the best. It's hard to say favorite part with a movie like Saving Private Ryan because it's sort of very dark, but made palatable by Steven Spielberg. You said one of the parts that really stood out to you was when the sniper in the watchtower knows his time is up, and this tank sort of blows his character up, and then it cuts.
The sniper, the American sniper. Yeah. There was an interesting take on that. It was they're in a big conflict, and they've got their sniper up in the watchtower, and he's up there and turns his turret and just blows the whole steeple tower to smithereens. And it's just a great moment where Tom Hanks looks up at what just happened, and he's firing his machine gun, and he just goes back to firing his machine gun, and then he glances back at the tower for just a moment. And that's the guy he's been fighting shoulder to shoulder with for years, since the beginning of the war. And that's all the time he has right now to mourn him. I just thought that was a great double take moment of, I don't have time to think about what just happened right now. I got to get done what I got to get done.
Yeah.
It's a great moment.
There's actually an interesting sort of segue here in the fact that Edward Burns, who usually makes romantic comedies, had a great role in Saving Private Ryan. And you usually write, you've written a fair amount of romantic comedies, but action wise, you still have some stuff to cross off, right, on your bucket list, I imagine.
Well, I got I did write a kind of action tank movie, World War
Mm,
II. I'm a World War II guy, historian, whatever it is. Historian's too
mm,
strong a word for it, but
right.
I'd really uh,
Oh, shoot.
and it's so interesting, and war is an interesting idea of what it brings out
Yeah.
in people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I adapted a book about a haunted tank that runs amok in Europe, and that was kind of fun. Uh,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
A haunted
yeah,
tank?
a haunted tank. Yes, a
Nice.
haunted tank. That was
Very
the
cool.
Germans were experimenting with the occult a lot. They were big into the
Whoa.
occult. Actually, had a breakthrough near the end of the war, and figured something out about how they could have impenetrable armor.
Wow.
Um, so it's
Wow.
yeah,
I
so
had,
it's how they have to stop it.
I didn't know that they were into the occult. I literally did not know that at all.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I need to say this out loud. I'm lighting a candle. So in fact,
Okay.
maybe a little pyrotechnics for the viewers here. Here it comes. Ready? Oh shoot. Wait 1 second. All right. Boom.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That is seriously like,
Well, or is this
what's
a
that?
spiritual? Is it
Um,
spiritual, or is it
is it?
scented,
I don't
or
know.
what do you?
I mean, because all these candles have like spiritual flavors on them now, you know, and then they have like little asterisks, like doesn't really do that.
Yeah,
Like,
is it one of Gwyneth Paltrow's candles? Is it?
it's not one of it's not one of it's not one of Gwyneth Paltrow's candles.
Okay,
But
just checking.
I will take that sponsorship if Gwyneth Paltrow is watching this. I'll totally rep those candles. Oh man. Um wow, where do we go from there, Roger?
Like,
You really put you yeah, that's funny.
uh,
Um okay, so let's talk about your romantic comedies for a minute real quick. Let's jump into those romantic comedies. Let's see. Well, actually, I have a bunch of questions about this one screenplay you have that has just been circling production for a long time. Different people have looked at it. You've had, long talks throughout the years about it being made. Uh, it's a it's a movie about a guy who is basically tricked into thinking he's won the lottery as sort of a last ditch effort to try and cheer him up. Um, right now, it's called The Chance You Take, and I gotta say, a guy who thinks he's won $1 million and has to figure out his life from there is really kind of a right now movie. I mean, I think a lot of people would like to go on that journey of actually maybe kind of sort of at least having the feeling like they have $1 million and then
right.
making all the other decisions after that. What was the closest in your mind do you think it was to really just getting down that pipe and being produced?
Well, it was when it got to the president of Columbia Pictures.
Wow.
I got it to that point. It climbed the ladder through all the readers, and I was told by the other producers that I was involved with that the president was going to be reading it over the weekend, and so that
Wow.
ultimately gave it a thumbs down. But it's one of those things. It's like, what do you mean? Being feeling bad about winning the silver medal at the Olympics or something like that.
Yeah.
It happened. That happened a few years ago. Um, but it's one of those things that I think it's between people who are kind of in the game and people who aren't in the game. And that's too bad it didn't get made, and I would have loved to have seen that. But what it is kind of, for any writer, it's a verification that you're on the right track,
Mm,
and that you are considered.
mhm.
So it really is, it's an actor being called back 2, 3 times for a
Yeah,
role, and it being down to a couple of people. You shouldn't, of course you want the role, but you ought to feel like, you're that close.
right,
And it's so at one point it's disappointing, the other end it's very encouraging. you know
right, right. Yeah. I think that's a very, very good way to look at it. Like, if I get like, I'm well, a little less so now, but much less so now actually, but definitely first starting out writing and trying to get it in people's palms. I was just like, they just don't understand me, like like blah blah blah, you
right.
know.
Yeah.
But but
No,
yeah,
there can be any number of reasons they might not get it. That means you got to get it in the right people's hands. It's persistence, and it's a lot of luck, too. And they might not get it at that time either. So there's all these stories about these scripts that are shopped around for years and years and years, and
right,
finally break through. And it's like, what do you mean it took 10 years to get this Academy Award winning movie made?
yeah, yeah,
It's like,
definitely.
the really it's difficult. So
Yeah, it was crazy to I was watching the commentary for a really big Martin Scorsese movie, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like this took 20 years, and this person did a draft, and then it fell through like 5 years ago, you know." And you would definitely think that he could just do whatever he wants whenever, you know. Although maybe he can now.
yeah,
I don't.
Clint Eastwood had to argue with, I think, with his own studio about making $1 Million Baby. He had made a whole bunch of movies with the same studio, made them a whole lot of money. He said, "This is what I want to do next," and they said, "Yeah, we don't think so. Good luck with that." And he was like, "What?" And he went off and got it made somewhere else on his own, and Academy Awards abound. And it's
Yeah,
a dynamic that the guy could have a track record like he has, and still have somebody go, "No, I don't think so." I mean, don't you owe him one? Don't you owe him? I mean, wouldn't you keep betting on that guy?
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I just keep pushing my chips in on whatever he's doing.
yeah. I mean, I actually, yeah. I don't know. There's like, I don't know how to phrase this for a couple of reasons, but he was having this career surge basically sort of after $1 Million Baby. He put out, we're talking about World War II movies. He put out two World War II movies in a row, one on the American side and
Hmm.
one on the side of the Japanese,
Oh yeah,
showing,
Iwo Jima, right?
yeah,
Flags
some
of Our Fathers, and
letters from Iwo Jima maybe. um but you
right.
know I yeah, heavy stuff. And then what after that he did Gran Torino, which is kind of like the weirdest blockbuster on the
I
history of
know
the
it's the
planet.
strangest
It's
movie I've
just like
seen.
it's like a western, but it's like modern, and obviously there's
Yeah,
the
Dirty Harry
yeah.
plus the guy from Unforgiven and an old guy movie. I just don't
Yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah,
about a guy who likes to yell, "Get off my lawn!"
yeah,
to people.
yeah. I watched it during quarantine, and I was just like, it's a great movie, but I can't explain. I can't explain. Like, but yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I had one more question about. Well, I have a bunch of questions about the chance you take. I've talked to you about it a bunch of times. I am quietly campaigning for the main character, although I have to admit I don't look like a guy who would be in an ad agency right now, as far as I
I don't know what
know.
they look like anymore. I think they can look like anything they want
Yeah,
these
maybe
days.
I'll like
You can't
go.
get the Mad Men idea in your head too much.
That's true. That's true. I actually it's crazy I'm talking about this, but I actually did I did like a non-union commercial for like $50 when I was first starting out in um and the the guts of their ship, their office was very very new age. They were, they had like comfy chairs and like glass paneled walls. They had like a movie playing on a giant projector while they were coding or whatever they were doing. um you know it was it was a pretty funky experience. But I just had to mention that because it was like that was like one of my first big things. It was in an ad agency, and you actually like really sort of show the life of an ad agency in this film, this Lotto film. They're basically trying to market this sort of regular car. It's got no specific features that even make it special, but people keep buying it, so they have to keep promoting it. And it's like a big item for their agency. And so basically a big
Hmm.
part of the movie is actually the main character, Michael, trying to crack this code. um, but right, so this one thing I noticed about it. I might be sounding a little clipped here. I'm having coffee for the first time in forever. So I'm dealing with that new thing. And but anyway, so right, so Michael, I noticed when he is tricked into believing that he's won the lottery, and he really hasn't. And miraculously, through deft screenwriting on your part, does not quit his job. uh, One of the first things he does while he's still at the ad agency is he starts bankrolling small projects for like amenities and
Right.
stuff. He's just like, get this guy a limo, get this person a gift basket. I'm going to get lunch for everyone so we can stay in the office and work and do well. I really noticed that in particular today, because I just thought, like that is the hardest thing to do when you feel like you don't have any money, is like put up a couple hundred of your own money, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was just kind of we needed to. That's the normal reaction of somebody who didn't have much money and now has a bunch of money and wants to be a high roller.
Hmm.
I think that the idea that the audience knows he hasn't really won the lottery makes them cringe a little bit. But I mean, mostly the stories about the idea that him staying at his job is about him kind of it's why I picked an ad agency, because it's something where you can create a really good ad and have somebody telling you, no, that's not right, we're going to go with this stupid thing over here because that's what the client wants. So Michael's always been held down by the idea of, even though he's hired to be creative, he's told to just do what the client says. Well, why?
Oh, shoot.
So the thinking he has the lottery money in his pocket gives him the confidence to say, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to finally say what I think. I'm going to push forward the ads I wanted to. I'm not just
Yeah.
going to run out of here. I'm going to show them what I had and what
Yeah.
I'm working on, what I'm doing. And I don't
Yeah.
care what you think. What are you going to do? Fire me? I quit. So
Yeah.
that's why, he was in that tough job where, he's not just digging ditches, and his job isn't, ABC. It's this you're judged on your work, and it's subject to other people's opinions, and
Right.
he can break out of that. So that was what was fun about using the ad agency, is the struggle to make your mark there.
Right. Right. And I, as people might expect, when he thinks he's won the lottery and he's about to quit his job, he he really makes a scene.
Yeah,
He like basically goes from room to room in the ad agency and like just has his way, and then it finally it sort of culminates in this really incredible scene where I'm not blowing smoke. I really, really like this scene where his sort of best friend character type just like shoves him into the bathroom, and it's just like, what are you doing? And like his friend is actually the one who sort of makes him believe he's won the lottery. So just to kind of just try and break him out of his rut, because he's actually in a pretty understandably funky place. And so he confronts Michael in the bathroom, and uh and when Michael just says, I won the lottery, it's the best. It's just like it's just been ramped up to a real high point, you know? And so when Michael says, I won the lottery, it's really like you just get that, the relief, the excitement, everything has changed, Like you believe, he believes he has won the lottery, and like
right.
everything that comes with that. So what was it like in particular? How did you construct that crazy bathroom scene?
I think he needed to run around and do
Oh shoot.
some silly things, but what he was doing was he basically had a file on every client that the ad agency had, and had been doing work on it, but nobody wanted to listen to him. So he basically was breaking in every meeting he could find and throwing his work down on the table in
Mm,
front of the client in the middle of a meeting, and say, never mind what they said, look at this stuff. And the clients were looking at it and going, what he's doing is, in his mad dash to kind of distribute all his work, he has uh, impressed people, and therefore, we have to have a reason why they don't just fire him. And it's because the clients now are seeing, like, where have you been keeping this guy? So now they're in a tough spot. His friend, who's been chasing him, trying to tell him, no, you didn't really win the lottery, now realizes he's got to stop him. And when
mm,
he says, I've won the lottery, it's all built up. He thinks he's won the lottery. He's running around being an idiot. He'd be getting fired if it wasn't for the idea that his work actually is good. And his friend now has a choice whether to tell him or not. He's so excited. He's grown a pair. He's doing everything he should be doing. And if Dennis says, you didn't win anything, it's going to crush him.
yeah,
So he has to play along. And
right.
so that idea that he's so happy and everybody watching is thinking, no, you didn't, you poor fool. You've screwed yourself. And it's just that happiness that is so false, you know.
Yeah.
I think
Um,
I can't tell him anything. This is the guy he should be all the time. I can't take that away from him right now.
right, right. And it's really interesting because um, you know, uh he's engaged, right? The Michael character at that
Yeah.
point. He's like engaged, and so at first, uh the effect that's happened to Michael does improve his relationship, but not forever. Eventually, he starts being like
Right.
uh, a moody Judy at this big family dinner with his fiance's parents. Um,
Right.
and that was actually like for me personally as a reader, because look, I don't have $1 million, and so like when I'm reading the script, I'm like, this is great, you know. It's just like, and like some personal troubles,
Right.
whatever, you know, like who cares, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but then like but
Yeah.
really when he's at that family dinner, I was like, oh, this is actually consequential, you know, like his fiance,
The
uh
parents who are worried their right fiance is going to, their daughter's going to marry a loser. So
yeah, ouch,
he's just
yeah.
tired of listening to them and doesn't quite know what to do.
Yeah, I kind of get, you know, like there's, I think, you know, even if you're not engaged, I think, you know, I think I don't know, people surely have many different opinions about this, but like I think for some guys you get to a point where you don't necessarily want to have to impress the girl's parents anymore, you know, like
Right.
you kind of
Yep.
want, you know, you want your
Right.
thing to be your thing, and you definitely wouldn't want the parents' opinion to influence your thing, you know. So at the same
Right.
time, his fiance obviously loves her dad, and so he has to, you know, walk this tightrope in this dinner scene, whereas before that he's just, you know, getting green lights all day every day.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's kind of, it's still her father, so he can't really act out, but he wants to tell the guy to get lost at him. And he's kind of stuck in between there. And I think a lot of guys have been through that.
hmm,
He's got a secret he can't tell them. And it does kind of make him want to go back. And part of the construction of the screenplay is the idea of like, well, you always said you could, won't let you. Well, now you got nothing stopping you. Go. And it's part of the idea. His wife, his fiance, wants him to follow his dream,
yeah,
except he's not following it.
right,
He's just going to work and sitting there and doing ad campaigns he won't show anybody and doing whatever management tells him to do.
yeah,
And he's not getting anywhere, but he doesn't
right,
want to get fired and he needs a raise. So he's stuck. And I think a couple of $1 million would unstick a lot of us. But it is that idea of like, thinking you can do something, but nobody's giving me a chance.
right,
Well, he's got his chance, and in a way, he's blowing it. So
yeah,
it's like if you felt as an actor you could nail any big room, and suddenly you could get in any room you want, audition for any part you want,
yeah,
and you start freaking out because now you got no excuses.
yeah, yeah.
There you are. There's Spielberg. Go. And how many of us would freak out? Because
Oh,
now if
big
you
time.
fail, it isn't because they won't let you in the room. You're in the room. So
Right.
that's what I wanted to explore with that.
Yeah, and it's a really fun ride, and yeah, I really, you know, we've talked about this many times. I've read the script, and it really sort of breaks up the cliche about it, you know, and just really like it really kind of puts you in that place and like actually sort of says that thing. It's like, you know, what would you do if you had $1 million? And like that thing about, okay, you're in the room. How do you handle that? Actually, I just you know, like I'm working on like a couple small scripts where I'm maybe gonna act a little bit, you know, and I was actually like, you know what, I need to crack open some of these old acting books that I have, you know, like I'm not, you know, I should you know, I gotta, you know, I gotta brush up really because I, you know, like it's like, you know, like every, you know, actor who has ever spent a minute in New York City wants to do Shakespeare, I think, from what I've seen. and I'm like, man, when was the last time I read one of these plays? So so yeah,
Mm.
there's always more to do at whatever level you're at.
Oh yeah,
So
I go back and pick up my screenwriting books and look at them again when I'm working on something, because they just remind you of something you've forgot,
yeah,
and it just takes one thing maybe to dislodge a problem you're having. So it's
right.
great to go back to them.
So what was the time recently? Do you remember a problem you were having and that you just finally went, you know what, I gotta look at a book. I gotta look something up on the internet.
No, it's not like a specific problem. Like I can't do this or again. You just, I think when you're writing, it more feels like I this feels slow, or this feels bogged down, or I don't feel like I'm doing something right. So you just go back and read random parts. If it's a scene, you just start reading about scenes. So it's not like, geez, how do I solve this? And the answer's in this book
Yeah. Oh,
is, but somewhere there's the answers in there, and you're just not even quite sure what the question is yet. But something feels dull or boring or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And then some of it is just going back and watching movies that you really enjoy watching, that you feel like
Good
that's
point.
good filmmaking. Steven Spielberg, whenever he says he's starting on a project, he goes back and watches a handful of films again to
Hmm.
remind him of what he needs to do. He watches Lawrence of Arabia, and he watches The Seven Samurai, and a
Oh,
couple of
cool.
other movies, and they just to remind him what it is he's doing. And
Oh,
it's interesting every time that's part of his prep to get him going.
that's a great
And
idea.
yeah, so it is kind of like they'll go back and watch a movie. What kind of script are you working on? Go watch a movie, a couple of good movies that are similar to what you're doing. If it's a romantic comedy, go get if it's an action movie, is it a suspense, and go watch them. Go, what are they doing that I'm not? You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
that, I think that helps a lot.
It was weird for me. One of my first attempts to write an action thriller, I was actually watching like the most like sitcom romantic comedy type TV show, like binge watching it while I was like working on this action thriller where like people are like just trying to slay each other and stuff. Like I was like, this is kind of weird. Literally be like
You're kind
typing
of
the scene,
you're
and
watching
then
the
he
wrong thing,
shoots.
man. Yeah,
Yeah. But so what's your handful of films?
my handful of film. Oh, I don't just don't. James L. Brooks's stuff is great too.
Mm,
I like dialogue. I like back and
right.
forth. Uh, I like dramedies. So As Good as It Gets, broadcast news.
Oh, good one.
Um, those kind of movies are in the wheelhouse. Some Aaron Sorkin uh,
Yeah.
stuff is good to look at. Social
Yeah.
Network,
I just
but
just
yeah,
rewatched that.
yeah. But the great opening scene of Social Network is just this two people talking, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that David Fincher is picked up that wanted to do that script and have Aaron Sorkin writing the screenplay. It's like, here's a guy who does a lot of talking and likes to do a lot of movies with people talking in rooms and
Yeah.
settings, and you got the guy who made Seven. It's
So
how do you put these guys together? And
I gotta say that was like uh, that's a great movie.
yeah,
There's not much more to be said, but like yeah, that David Fincher moody lighting
yeah,
is
yeah.
just perfect for that. I
Yeah, it
mean,
really
you
was. It
know,
was, yeah, even in the opening scene in the bar, it's just two people sitting across from each other talking, but
yeah,
it does have that dull kind of. It's
right.
funny how it's in all his movies.
Yeah, it's like wintertime when he's like working
Yeah, it's always dull.
on the thing. Yeah, and like he like when he comes up with the idea for a relationship status, he like runs
Right.
through the snow, which
Yeah.
I was like, I was like that. Yeah, that's probably how that moment should be treated. And honestly, if I thought of that, I probably would run through the snow
Right.
myself, like
Right.
scribble it down on the first
His
piece
big
of paper I
epiphany.
saw.
This is
Yeah,
what
right.
yeah, this is what will separate it from everything else. Because that's what everybody wants to know when they look at somebody, at the college level as well. Is she dating anyone? It's like,
Yeah,
he has his friends saying, they ought to kind of hang something around their neck and let
yeah,
us all know whether they're available or not. And he realizes, oh my God, that's it.
yeah,
And then he
yeah,
just does that one change and it's ready to go.
yeah. Well, it's crazy because like I was like I remember this one line in particular. Um, I don't. Yeah, like this is the most I've sort of like cocked Hollywood basically in one of these podcasts. I think it's fine, right? I can talk about movies. I have a
I suppose, yeah, your
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, right. So but there's this part of Freaks and Geeks where one of the characters he literally just asks one of his friends like, does she have a boyfriend? And he's like, ah, I got you, like you like
Yeah,
her. And like I can tell because you just asked if she has a boyfriend or
that's
not.
true.
It's like I was just like, yeah, it's like that.
Yeah,
Do we say that as much anymore? Probably not, And it's kind of a cute line, to be honest with
probably
you.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's, it is interesting because it probably takes stalking to a whole new level too. I mean, it used to be,
yeah,
hang around and follow her around just so you could look at her. And now it's just go on her Facebook page.
yeah.
The romance of stalking.
So you actually wrote a movie that so I sort of interpreted it wrong. It starts with an online dating service and becomes more than that. And actually like so just so people know when Rogers says there's a twist at the end, there is an actual twist at the end. So you wrote this movie Compatibility where these two characters, a man and a woman, are matched by this online dating service. But it also has like an in-person arm of the dating service or something like that. And but their um, their first date sort of goes awry. But the guy he's actually kind of upset because he's like this dating service, this internet thing on which our whole lives basically depend, said that um, we're perfect for each other, and you don't want to even like stay and try to figure this out for like 10 minutes. You've already
Right.
given up on the idea. So do you remember like when you came up with that, the sort of motivation and just what was going on in your world at the time?
Oh, probably I can't remember what was going on, but it was weird to come up with the idea because it really wasn't about dating or anything. It was more about confidence. And I had read this article about how they put these kids in the kids that weren't keeping up with the rest of their classmates, that weren't getting good grades. They put them all in the same class, but they didn't tell them they were in the class of kids that were falling behind. They told them that they were in an exceptional class, and that the reason
Mm,
they were struggling is because the curriculum wasn't moving fast enough for them, and that we're going to be
right,
teaching you at a different speed, and because you're all capable of it, and because all the kids believed they were smart,
right,
and they weren't taught in the beginning anything any faster or slower than anybody else. They were just simply told that they were smart and we needed to change things and you can do it. And by the end of the year, the kids in the class had some of the highest grades in the school and were
boom,
indeed then in an accelerated learning program. So that idea of somebody just believing they had, maybe it's a little like the lottery movie, believing you have something you don't, and how much of life is about having confidence. As you take a cab driver and a highly functional woman who owns her own business, who has everything going for her, and you this through a screw up, they are put together and told, we've never seen a match so perfect. And so this cabbie Uber driver meets her, and he's like, yeah, I knew it. And she's like,
that was the perfect for that
and she
character.
can't wait to get out of the bar. Yeah, exactly. He goes, I knew it. She gets up to go to the ladies' room. He's snapping a picture of her walking away. He's sending it to his friends, who are like, no way, because they all know he's been set up on this thing, and he's afraid of what he was going to find. And all of a sudden, he's on top of the world, and she's confused and wants to get out of there. And then he realizes she really does want to get away from him, and he realizes that, somebody told you met the perfect guy, and you're ready to bail right away. You don't even want to dig any deeper. You're too caught up in your superficial bullshit. So, the hell with you. And now she's like, can't believe this guy's basically telling her to step off and get lost. And maybe she's really has misjudged the situation. I mean, what is it about this guy?
Yeah. Which is the ultimate guy fantasy, that you can like get pissed off and storm away, and she'll actually be like, maybe he had a point.
I am wrong. Yeah, you figure she'd roll her eyes, and then she's got to go, wow, that sucked. That was a shitty thing for me to do, is basically and she's called on it by the agency, and she says, yeah, you guys got it wrong. And it's like, well, how long did you give it? 10 minutes. Well, really, was that enough time? It's like, I mean, everybody can kind of say, well, I can see why you're alone. And she's like, trust me, I have an instinct about these things. And and the person says, well, how's it working out so far? You really can't trust yourself. So she tried. So now we have this really smart, attractive, savvy woman chasing down this guy, asking him to go back out. And so it just, it goes from there. Everybody in the audience knows they shouldn't be together except them.
Yeah.
But it gives him the confidence to kind of be himself. He feels like, I can just be myself. And then he realizes, well, I really can't. Is an idiot. It's almost like he's phoning it in. He doesn't think he has to try. And then he realizes, well, I do have to try. I'm blowing.
Very true. Yeah. I think that's an interesting, it's just such an interesting thing. Like you maybe shouldn't not try at all, but also you don't want to be trying all the time.
You shouldn't be jumping through hoops, but you ought to be, kind and considerate, and be, and treat everybody with, and try to be entertaining. Try to take her somewhere she wants to go instead of where you want to go, and
big time.
And she sees it and appreciates it. So this is making her look for the good in him, and it's making him try to elevate himself to whoever ought to be with her.
Right. So I keep meaning to mention this. We are having just a little bit of lag, but just like the kids in those classes, we're not slow, we're exceptional.
Lag.
What's that? There was lag.
It's not lag. This is like the internet is so fast, it can't keep up with We can't keep
exactly.
up with it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So uh let me gather my thoughts here. There's so many there's really so many different ways that this conversation could go, to be honest. The classic a little coffee, you have two thoughts at once, traffic jam. But let's I'm going to choose that basically in these three scripts that I've read, like more like 2.25, uh I've read scripts of yours called The Chance You Take. I read If I Fell. I read part of another script that was actually about a sweeping pandemic. That was really, really crazy. And then I read a script that was compatibility. I read part of
Right, part of
compatibility.
that.
So I noticed from The Chance You Take, If I Fell, and compatibility, like those first two screenplays that I read, uh, these characters are sort of like modern day people you might meet at the bar on the street. They're kind of like superheroes in regular people clothes, like character wise. They've got, like they're really kind of in ruts. They've had, some bad experiences, and they're like sad, but they have composure, and they're sort of they're reliable. They get through their day, and they contribute to their workplace, but they have something that's put them in a funky mood, but they're not just in a bad mood. They still have humor and passions and and witty repartee with their best friend characters. And I kind of noticed that with your compatibility leading man, he's a little more uncouth than the other two. Did you have to work on that at all, or was it like natural?
No, I don't know. I guess you draw in a whole bunch of people, and you figure out what you don't want to make him an ass. You
Hmm.
just make him somebody who hasn't been exposed to, you know, maybe his dad wasn't around or his dad was an idiot, but he's not. He's a good guy. He's doing all the good things quietly.
Right.
He's got this frustrating spot in his life. He would like somebody in his life, and he doesn't know how to go about it. So
Yeah.
he isn't a jerk about it or anything like that. He's saying, how do you find people? So he turns to a service to find somebody. He's
Yeah.
frustrated with the idea because he's a cab driver. He gets all sorts of people in the back seat. And there's all, if you're driving in New York City and you get
Yeah.
people on dates, and you're wondering, how did he get this girl? How do you get this girl?
Yeah.
What, when whenever he tries to chat, he says something stupid. So he doesn't really know how to go about it. And he has
Yeah.
zero confidence in that area.
Yeah.
And so you have to set up a guy. You have to say, well, what's missing with this guy, and how do we put it there? And how does he have to go about getting it? And what does he have to overcome to find it?
Yeah.
So he's got good friends. He's got a job. He's good at his job.
Right.
He's, helps friends, but he's got something empty there, and he doesn't know
Yeah.
how to go about filling it.
I really like that you mentioned that. He is good at his job and he takes it seriously. And so many people could fall into the trap of thinking, A, that's not a serious job, or B, that maybe you are just unable to take it seriously. But I was actually like really pleased the idea that, you know, a a person could decide to be a cab driver, commit to being a cab driver, be okay with being a cab driver, like um and all that being said, he is hooked up to his phone because at any point he can get
Right.
pinged for,
Right.
an $80 drive or something like that.
Right.
So that was, I think that was a great choice for someone who turns to an online dating service and is then maybe a little impatient with it, like someone who has to sort of like click in with the technology in that manner. It's like part of his livelihood.
Right. Right.
And in fact, when I was living in New York City for a time, that is the moment when I literally had to get a smartphone. I had like a really, you know, I had a pretty, I think, I think at the time I had a flip phone that I loved, but I couldn't get on the internet. I worked for a catering service and I had to confirm my availability for catering jobs night by night through the website, which isn't that abnormal. And in fact, I could make decent money catering, but that was the actual moment where I had to get with the times and get a smartphone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't stay in the prehistoric era forever.
Yeah,
I
no.
resisted it for a while. Actually, resisted being on a online when I was one of the reasons I would go to Starbucks and type away on my laptop years
Mhm.
ago, before, when I was the only guy in there with a laptop. Well, I didn't want to be online. They say, "Are you online?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to be online. It's loaded with distractions." So I
Yeah.
was on the opposite end, where I had to make sure I was cut off from the distractions,
Right.
because if I was home, I'd be online, I'd be screwing around with this, screwing around. So I had to go somewhere where
Big time.
I couldn't screw around with anything.
Yeah, like so I talked to a guy in comic books, really. I guess I can totally say who it was. I talked to Shannon Wheeler of the creator of Too Much Coffee Man, and he said that he had a pretty sort of sophisticated opinion of social media, which is that he can actually just sort of present his work to people more quickly, if he wants, like. And I had never quite heard that before, but sometimes for me personally, obviously, social media can be a distraction for many people. Like, don't throw me under the bus, world. You're on social media too. Like,
Yeah, yeah, right.
like, so for you, when you're doing some writing and stuff like that, what are the what are the websites and types of distractions you really have to watch out for? It's like, you start, you get 10 pages in on something and you're like, oh, good for me. I guess I'll click, 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 click.
Yeah,
What's that rabbit hole for you?
I don't know that it's going on to a website or something, but it might be. I have to put it on everything on airport so that my friends aren't texting me and emailing me, and
Hmm.
which is great to have people, but you do need to carve out time as if you're at work. And I really can't. I'll get distracted by it. Somebody will send me a link to somebody. Say, "Have you read this? You know, have you
Yeah,
seen this?" And next thing you know, you're clicking on a link. It's something on YouTube, and then you go, "Oh, this other video looks interesting too." And
right.
next thing you know, it's an hour's going by, and so have you seen this guy's TED talk? And you're watching that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you really do
yeah,
have to kind of cut yourself off a little bit and
yeah,
focus.
yeah, definitely. And we've all had to do it. We have all succeeded, and we have all most certainly failed. So, um,
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah. So there's so many ways to go from that, but I do want to touch on If I Fell, this other romantic comedy you did, just because I just really like it. It's a great the whole will they won't they element of a romantic comedy, like the most easiest part to eye roll at because they're going to get together allegedly,
Right.
question mark. You really sort of found your way through that, and it was actually fun when their relationship was developing. um, so I was wondering
Okay.
I was really sort of wondering like what your focus on was when you were actually writing it. Were you focused on the characters? Were you worried about certain pitfalls? How did it actually feel to write sort of a romantic comedy that actually felt like it shook up the snow globe a little bit?
Um, I think it was just, I mean, basically the premise is the main character has a job where she attempts to seduce guys are engaged to women who have maybe their family has a lot of money, or they are very successful, or maybe they just want to know what the deal is with them. So if it was part of it was hearing Chris Rock say, you know, men are only as faithful as their opportunities. So that kind of stuck in my head. And then I was listening to Howard Stern, and he had somebody on who actually did this for a living, and they were talking about it. It was really interesting. It's like, there's that, you're told where they usually go, and you show up and you just flirt with him a little bit and see if he uh pursues it at all. So it's nothing.
Yeah.
What a attractive woman in a bar. A lot of the girls are actresses, and that's how I set up that character. But then you'd have to say, well, why is she doing this? And I think, well, if she was a failed actress, that wouldn't be as much fun as maybe she's somebody who got hurt really badly by somebody who cheated on her. So instead of falling apart, really, she stumbles into this job where, in a way, she thinks she's doing the Lord's work here. She's saving people from bad relationships.
Right.
And she, in a way, because her job is to get a guy, what she doesn't realize is that maybe help feeds her ego a little bit.
Right.
And then I thought, well, what happens when she goes up against a guy who's a nice guy, has a good job, good friends, and this guy wants nothing to do with her, gives her the brush off,
Right.
and she finds a way to spend a little time with him and go and thinks this guy's a great guy,
All right.
and
I,
he wants
I gotta
nothing to
tap
do
out.
with
I gotta
me,
go to the
and
bathroom. I'm sorry. I like this has happened. This is actually the third time this has happened on the show. And the first two times were guests. The guests
it's
were
the
just like
coffee.
yeah, it's the coffee. The guests were like slowly becoming more and more uncomfortable, unbeknownst to me. And then
They start
finally the
doing
big
the pee
reveal that they
dance.
just have to go to the bathroom. And so I have now officially felt your pain to my previous guests. So I'm gonna chop this part out successfully. Roger, do your thing, man. Play some tunes, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Yeah, I got about 10 more minutes left. So,
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was just one thing I wanted to touch on real quick for If I Fell was really because I really mean it about the will they won't they, and it's really easy to say because there are actually several beats where one character or the other is sort of like they kind of walk away from each other. They're like, oh,
right.
you don't want to talk about this, fine. You don't want to be friends, fine.
Right.
And they actually start picking up the pace. And so, um, the main character, this incredibly attractive woman is trying to seduce him for like, you know, at a bar, and he's, miraculously handling it very well, and in a very amusing way as well. He's got, he's got some charm, but he's also setting up boundaries. Um, but finally she's like, if you don't want to be my friend, you don't have to be my friend. And
Yeah.
he kind of like runs after her and like catches her at this crosswalk, and they start
Yeah, I
getting.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the physical idea of he leaves the bar, so she chases after him and
Mm,
then tries to walk with him, and he's trying to say, I want nothing to do with this. And
yeah.
then he tries to be a little firm, and she accuses him of being rude. So you say, you don't want to talk to me, I just was talking to you, that's all. You don't want to be talk to me, but don't be rude, okay? Don't be rude, and walks away from him, leaving him with, what? Wait a minute, I'm not rude.
Yeah.
And then he feels like he has to
Yeah.
defend himself.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they've been walking together and talking for like 20 minutes. And on the one hand, she feels like she's slowly luring him in,
Hmm.
but on the other hand, they're talking, having a nice conversation. He winds up walking her all the way home, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
it's then she gives him her number, which is really kind of a bold move, might be outside the lines of what you're supposed to do. But I think part of it is she's like, I wouldn't mind talking to this guy again. So here's your final exam. I'm going to give you my number. And
Yeah.
she goes inside the house and then runs upstairs and looks out the window. And he's looking
Right.
at the number. He looks at the number and he crumbles it up and he throws it in a garbage can
Yeah.
and walks away. And then she's like, good boy, way to go. All right,
Right.
wow.
Yeah.
And then she goes back from the window and he goes over and pulls the number out of the trash can. So it's like he's not quite
Yeah.
sure where he is with all this. All of a sudden, she doesn't know that he's,
Yeah.
maybe interested, but he has another reason for being interested that we
Yeah.
don't know at the time.
I also like that your best friend characters, really especially in If I Fell, they actually have like they don't have all the puzzle pieces, but they also have pretty valuable opinions.
Right. Yeah.
They're actually like they're not just kind of like I mean there's like an idea that they're not just there for their to be the best friend, you
Right.
know, but also they
We'll try to
yeah,
make them real.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I really liked like particular with the guy's best friend who is like sort of that classic like devil may care, chasing girls like type. um
Yeah,
you
he
know
can't believe this guy is. What were you doing there? What are you, out of your mind? He's like, I don't need this in my life. He goes, oh yes, you do.
yeah, right,
Everybody
right.
needs that in
Yeah,
their life.
exactly. So
So he's the
he's
guy who would
yeah,
be.
yeah, so he's this best friend character going like, you need to get out there, you need to have fun, and it's actually like, yeah, he does need to get out
Right.
there and have fun. Like this guy has a total point, and
Well,
like,
he's a bit of a
yeah,
stiff.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right, and
Yep.
then
Well, he just believe he's got a more devil may care attitude about it, and I think that you create that sidekick or best friend or somebody for the main character to talk to, so
yeah,
we can know what's going on in their head,
yeah,
and have somebody have, maybe this guy is us, who's
right,
going, what are you doing? What are you, crazy?
yeah, and they also work together. They're casting for a commercial, and that's how they sort of get they get more wrapped up
Yeah,
into a
that was
potential
why he was
relationship.
interested in their number, because he realized that they've been having trouble casting somebody for a
Yeah,
commercial they want to
and
shoot, and she
and
might be good for it.
she's this
Yeah,
insanely alluring woman, and
yeah,
so then yeah, there's this great scene where she has to like look at the camera, basically look at the main character and say, are you ready to be seduced? That was a great piece of scripting. But
right.
also I wanted to mention, like um so they're casting her, these two like best friends kind of, and it's kind of getting to the crux, and like the main guy still doesn't really trust her, and he's going like, she's an actress, and his best friend goes, "Look, I saw her. She wasn't that good an actress."
Yeah, I saw the way she looked at you. She's
Yeah,
nobody's that good or
yeah.
whatever.
That
Yeah,
was
so
like
she
the
was, yeah,
yeah. That was a real favorite truth grenade of mine in terms of like the guy. He's like the sort of like in Shakespeare terms, he's like the Sir Toby, like buffoon
right,
of it all. But
right.
he says something like
But
totally,
he's, yeah,
totally real.
what's going on is that basically she was great, and the reason she was really good in the audition was because she was looking right at you when she said it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's like seeing, in a way, seeing
yeah,
through her. She really is interested in him. But it's interesting, you talk about the back and forth, and then she knocks it out of the park with the audition, but then the guy, David, refuses, doesn't bring her up to the boss as the best
right,
candidate. Why? Because he's afraid of having to work with her, because he doesn't want
right,
to be around her. So he's letting this interfere with his job. So his friend goes around behind his back and shows the reel to their boss, and they say, "Well, this is a great selection." So now he's stuck with it. So he didn't want to have her around. Then he had the number, but he wouldn't call it. And Josh made him
right,
call. He comes
right,
in, she does a great job on the audition, but he tries to bury her. So there is kind of he doesn't even know what he thinks anymore.
right.
And
So,
on the one hand, you're kind of rooting for, you kind of, because they'll be the main characters, and they'll have some chemistry. You're kind of in a way rooting for her to get under his skin enough, but
yeah,
realizing that if he does that, then she's
yeah,
going to hate him because he's engaged.
yeah,
So it's like you'll go from the greatest guy I ever met to the worst thing in my life in
right,
a heartbeat. So
right,
you'll turn him into everything you hate
yeah,
if you win.
yeah, yeah.
So how
And
do you get around that?
yeah, and meanwhile for her, she's just trying to be this sort of like unstoppable,
Yeah, seducing
slayer of
machine.
men, but
Yeah,
she's actually like, kind of falling
yeah.
in love. Yeah.
Well, it's funny
So,
because she goes. He says to her, well, she keeps trying to flirt with him, and he says, "You know what? We work together now, and this is inappropriate."
yeah,
And if
yeah,
the shoe was on the other foot, you'd have me in human resources in five
yeah,
seconds. So knock it
yeah,
off. And
yeah,
then she's forced to simply work with him. She realizes, yeah, I'm being an asshole here. And she's got to respect his boundaries. And then they work together and they start
mm,
getting along really well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah,
and his friend can't believe this nonsense. Now you're what?
yeah,
Now you're
yeah,
friends?
right. Yeah,
And then he's like, I think I like her a little. And he's going, I can't believe you put yourself in the friend zone and now
right.
you're not happy. This is
Yeah,
priceless.
yeah.
It's
Which,
just,
yeah. And by the way, like, I think, I think the friend zone has been officially canceled, but at the same time, sometimes in life, you may or may not need labels. you know
yeah,
you
it's
know
true.
so
That's true.
but yeah, so there's so many ways to go, but since we're kind of short on time, I was actually curious. You've been adapting some books in the past for the screen. Do you have any ones for the future that you really wanted to kind of get your hands on to adapt
No,
into?
no, nothing right now. Right now, I've got working with a band, believe it or not, to try to create more narrative music videos. So
Whoa.
basically, the idea of piece by piece assembling what would be a longer piece by almost having a web series where there's a bit of narrative,
Wow.
and then there's a song that has something to do with what's been going on
Mm-hmm.
and performed by the band, and then you'd watch the next
Oh, cool.
video, and somewhere in there would be a song, and if you added it all together, I guess you'd have a musical. So that's kind of interesting. I'm working with
Nice.
a stand-up comic who's written a pilot,
Uh-huh.
and she's very fun, she's very talented. And I think that would really work well. She's not quite sure where she wants to go with it, but it's interesting to again try to adapt material, a comedian's material, into from their act into like a backstory and a
Yeah.
personality,
Yeah.
you know, working on it. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, that is really interesting. Unfortunately, we have to call it sometime, but that both of those both of those groups or acts sound very interesting. It would, of course, a comedian on the show would help me out a lot, and I've been really trying to get music on the show. So if they want to come out for that, they'd be most welcome. But thanks so much for your time, Roger. What are you up
Okay,
to the
well,
rest of the day? What's happening?
uh, just the normal life nonsense. Nothing
Errands.
exciting. Got some
Yeah.
errands to run, and
So okay, I gotta close with that question.
that's a
you're
killer. That's a
you're
killer.
it's a killer. You're a writer full time. You've still got to do laundry. You gotta
Yeah,
do all those that stuff.
got to get
Uh,
life done.
how do you do it? How do you manage?
I don't know. I outline it first.
You heard it here first, folks. You got to outline it first. The most tiny minutia of your day. Gotta have that outline. All right.
All right.
Cheers, Roger. That was really good. Excellent.
Enjoyed it. Well, thank you. Take
All
care.
right. See you next time.